Amateurs talk tactics, and leaders, experts talk logistics. What's your perspective, just being through war and recovery, humanitarian stuff? That why? I guess just tell us why logistics are so important and so vital in war zones.
I would volley this back to you. I'll tell you why, and I'm going to ask you. This is a question.
Yeah.
Right. Coming from a civilian to an operator.
Yeah.
Can a dev team survive without a supply line?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Not.
Well, there I rest my case.
Yeah.
Right. So the best warriors in the world are only as good as their supply line.
Yeah.
In resupply. So I picked up on that very, very quickly. I picked up on that logistics was the blind spot. Not that the U.S. government had missed it, but the ecosystem had missed it, because there were so many roadblocks and inconsistencies within the system within Iraq. That's what I hyper-focused on, was one of the compressive market sectors in that region at the time, because nobody was there. Why did I do that? Because I was weak, right? I wasn't you. So I couldn't go do things that everybody else could. I couldn't go up against Halliburton. I couldn't bid on them against jobs like that, but I had to pick up their blind spot. And I just became extremely effective in one specific market niche. And subsequently, that's what started building that whole ecosystem, was really logistics. And then that's when I understood the dynamics of logistics and how powerful it really is. So even to this day, I mean, that's part of our core business in another business that we're involved in, and then subsequently what that ecosystem is, and that is all about logistics.
Yeah.
So I'll reference Moses 1. It's logistics. Everybody thinks it has to do with Israel. It does not. It's who actually got in there first when we got the call. So, you're racing against some of the biggest in the business, and we come flying in there with a hawker like we own the place, and literally fly the first leg of them out. And everybody's like, well, how'd you get in there? You couldn't even get insured, and things like that. So it was a very interesting, it's still to this day, it baffles me, because it's still a blind spot in the ecosystem today. Logistics are a massive piece of it.
Every military operation knows this. I mean, in our ops orders, we give operation orders for every operation you're on. It's an acronym called SHMEAC. It's 5-point order, right? Situation, mission, execution, admin and logistics, and command and control. And admin and logistics, command and control, the foundation of an operation. Without those, you can't operate.
How are you going to get there?
Yeah.
What are you going to eat when you get there? Like, who's going to bring you more bullets? So I'm just using that as a very granular.
Even the FEBA, the forward edge of the battle area, as conventional military forces push forward, they can only move as fast as the logistical supply chain.
That's right.
Right.
Right. Growth happens that way.
Right.
Look at our supply chain now. Let's talk about economics real quick.
Yeah.
So reference our economics. So we're literally codependent on what? A supply chain that's out of China, because we don't have any industrialism in the United States. That is a huge, huge blind spot in a massive issue of national security, in my opinion. But anyway, I won't get on a tangent of that, but I'm saying that somebody missed that over the last 20 years of our life, 40 years of our life, and subsequently allowed the country to get to a place to where subsequently we're codependent on somebody else. Right. And anyway, that goes back to supply chain, logistics, and all of those things. So if you own the supply line, you also own your client. That's one thing I did learn. Because you can control that tail of that dragon, if you will, in some way. Meaning you can speed things up, slow things down. I mean, you can control the op tempo, right? You can, by just simply, if you're a day late, things happen. If you're a day early, things still happen, right? Maybe a different outcome, different collateral. But I've seen logistics actually manipulate the outcome of a certain situation multiple times.
You could use it as an adversary, right? In warfare, you attack logistics and supply lines, and economic warfare, you disrupt logistics and supply lines.
It's funny because we're having some pretty interesting conversations right now about SLDO, and I'll point back at the team, but supply line disruption. Let's say we've got a PhD in that.
Yeah.
So for the adversary. Because I'll learn the adversary quicker than I'll learn what we need to be doing on the front side of an operation. And I'll understand who we're pushing against. And then I'll disrupt that supply line first to annihilate that, to basically neutralize that threat in some way. We've done it in Haiti, Israel. Pick an AO.
Yeah, so, why face the threat when you could weaken the threat?
Also, and I'll throw this
incapacitate the threat.
Well, I'll throw this out at the operator in the room and say that, the greatest gift in my life that it took me a very, very long time to understand because I didn't come from your world, right? But was taking another man's life, right? And the second greatest gift was the choice not to. And then ultimately watching that play itself out in Haiti, right? Where there was not one round fired in Haiti. We were zero kinetics on the ground, and we were the most effective. So I go back and I say that not for any other reason to say that, one, that shows me that the team is drinking my Kool-Aid, if that makes any sense. And they had the discipline not to engage. That's also a massive piece of this equation, is the discipline to de-escalate and not just go ahead and destroy. That's historically what they're trained to do, is just go out there and eat. So to pull those guys back was actually humbling for me to watch, and then understand the ecosystem when we got out of that, and we kind of debriefed and in realizing that it had a major impact on how they approach things in the future. So it's been a blessing and a curse.
So why does, I mean, I've been around our government since I was 17 years old. Yep. I still work in and out of the government throughout my life, both military, contractor, working as a surrogate for the government, doing humanitarian stuff, just like yourself. Why is it that the government contracts organizations like yours to do logistical work and not do it all internal?
Well, I would use terminology such as plausible deniability, or and I'll just say that active service members can't go some places that the agenda may have, or they may have an interest to go there. Assets may be strung, maybe are kind of hemmed up at the moment. And then there's not very many players on the ground right now that there are, but they're not, if that makes any sense. The logistical supply line is massive, and there are massive players out there that can move things commercially. There are not massive players that will go into contested areas or deal with nefarious actors at some level, or go into war-torn theaters. Who wants to fly their $20 million aircraft into a place where they're shooting at you? I'm just saying, because if you can't insure yourself at some level, I'll use our corporate jet and say, we flew our personal corporate jet into Haiti. And that's pretty much the plane. If I'm flying with somebody, or if I'm flying around and my pilots aren't on up front, then the odds are I'm not on the plane. So it's kind of interesting the way that my mind kind of works and checks that. But the reality in this is that nobody's going to fly their aircraft in there. Haiti right now, the airspace shut down over the same thing. They just like to shoot aircraft. But ultimately you get down and who does that? Nobody, right? So guys historically don't want to do that. So whether the tail loads in Africa, that's a big issue right now. Nobody wants to fly their aircraft into Africa in certain regions. We get asked to fly in there quite a bit right now. And then subsequently, there's some places in South America, same way. Nobody wants to go in there. You get your aircrafts confiscated. All the things can happen to them. Your pilots can have a problem, or there's just so many variables, intangibles that you can't control, but you can control it if you have a human element to it, and the region, and the players on the ground. So that's been probably one of our most effective networks that we have. Is we historically don't go into we will, but we historically don't operate inside of countries that we don't have connective tissue on the ground politically. So I'm better connected Oconously than I am CONUS. So I'm not as connected here as everybody thinks I am. So take me to the Middle East, I got you. So take me to Africa, I got you.